Someone online had been capturing frames relentlessly, 185 images in total, snapped in sequence. The object kept behaving like no comet ever had. Sometimes it popped what looked like jets. Other times, there were circular distortions that seemed to pulse or shift dynamically, a halo that didn't stay still as if it were alive, adjusting, responding. "It looks like a fan," the man's voice cracked through the speaker, "with three jets, sometimes just that. And then sometimes, look, bam, it comes from here, then bam, another one, and then it goes here. What is it doing?" It was as if he were narrating a dance, something unfolding too quickly for the eye, but perfectly caught frame by frame through the lens of a powerful telescope. This wasn't guesswork. This was an unfolding visual diary, and it wasn't subtle. One image after another showed the same repeating behavior. Jets bursting outward, vapor trails curling behind them, and then, as if an intelligence were involved, a redirection, an intentional pause, and then more ejection. "It's like a thruster, man," he said. "Look, jets again." He was right. It wasn't chaos. It was pattern, organized, rhythmic, and it was being recorded live, not speculated post factum in some sterile lab. But it wasn't just the jets, there was something else. A recurring shape. A ring-like distortion that would appear and morph. At first glance, it seemed to be circular, like a shockwave or magnetic boundary, but on closer observation, it shimmered and adjusted, as if it were reactive. "This is a powerful telescope," he muttered, almost in disbelief, "and this is the first time I'm using it properly. Not bad." Indeed, the optical system wasn't consumer grade. It was advanced enough to cut through atmospheric haze, high-altitude glare, and distortions from the Earth's curvature, and what it was showing was enough to upend the traditional view of 3I/8less. What had first been dismissed as a fast-moving hyperbolic comet was showing the sort of behavior that made certain scientists uneasy. Not the kind who chase UFO headlines. The kind who understood orbital mechanics and had studied gravitational hills, solar sail concepts, and interplanetary station keeping. "It's raining a lot now," the voice said, "but next week, I'll go full on, after dinner, with this scope, and I'll record everything." The implication was chilling. If the object's behavior was truly being modulated, if it was emitting jets and ring distortions deliberately, then someone or something had to be behind it. And then came the most disturbing part. So far, what I've seen is the smoke. Sometimes it's erratic. You see here? A big jet. Matches perfectly with that composition from ESA. He wasn't exaggerating. When mapped against publicly released ESA models, the bursts and deviations lined up disturbingly well. The jets weren't random. They were timed, coordinated, directed. "Look here, the 3 jets again," he pointed out in the footage. "Man, it's a bit crazy." And that's when the theory crept in. Not from fringe forums, but tucked quietly into an academic paper he'd stumbled across. "Solar radiation propulsion," he whispered. "I read a scientific article today proposing that something like this could use radiation to steer." But no one wanted to touch that conclusion. Because the moment it's admitted that the acceleration and direction changes are not natural is the moment the nature of 3I/Atlas changes. Forever. He played the interview clip, Michikaku. A journalist's voice asked what would be required to admit an alien probe. "If it accelerates," Kaku had said, "before perihelion, then it's intelligent." That was the benchmark, a clean, testable line. If the object moved on its own against known gravitational forces before its closest point to the sun, then we'd be forced to admit intelligence. And it did. It accelerated. Not only that, it changed direction, not once, multiple times, toward very specific regions of space. And not only changed direction and accelerated, the man added, but changed direction to a precise point, the Hill sphere of Jupiter. That's what broke the spell for many who were watching, because the Hill sphere is not arbitrary. It's a gravitational equilibrium zone, the place where gravity from two massive bodies like the Sun and Jupiter cancel just enough to allow a small object to float, requiring minimal propulsion. In Earth's case, we use that equilibrium to park our most sensitive satellites, the James Webb Telescope, for example, precisely because they can stay put with minimal effort. Now consider this. 3I/Atlas was on a trajectory to pass directly through Jupiter's Hill sphere, the best place in the solar system to release something. A probe, a sensor, or something more. Imagine, he said, that they release sensors in advance to gather information. And it doesn't end there, because Earth's orbit would soon intersect the region where 3I/Atlas had already passed, crossing through a trail of dust, vapor, and maybe more. This wasn't theory, this was orbital fact. We'll cross the region, he said, in March, April, and man, this thing has been releasing loads of stuff. One of the chemicals detected, hydrogen cyanide, a compound that's toxic on Earth but could serve as something entirely different in another context, a cooling agent, a tracer, a defense screen. And here's where the logical fallacy appears, the one skeptics love. If it's releasing dust, it must be natural, they say. But he had an answer. If I want to camouflage myself in the forest, he said, I use branches and leaves. Am I a tree or a human disguised as a tree? Exactly. Natural output doesn't mean natural origin. It could mean intentional mimicry, which if true implies planning and intelligence. And that, more than anything, terrified the establishment because they weren't prepared for it. They didn't want to rewrite the textbooks. Not now. Not during a geopolitical climate already trembling at the edges, and certainly not if it meant admitting that something had crossed into the solar system that didn't behave like a rock or a comet or a frozen ball of ice. They want so badly, he muttered, for this not to be alien. And why? Because it wouldn't just break their beliefs. It would break their careers, their hierarchies, their ability to gatekeep truth. They'll flip it, he warned. Turn it into profit. Like always. After every crisis, the rich get richer. And it's true. History shows this pattern. The Great Depression, the 2008 collapse, even the pandemic. Each time, the divide widened. Those in power adapted, spun the crisis, and rose higher. And if 3I/Atlas turns out to be more than just ice and rock, they'll find a way to do it again. They're not experts in comets, he said. They're experts in fooling us, in profiting from mystery. And when things get dangerous, they'll run. Like in the movie Don't Look Up, leave us for the lions. There's no neat bow at the end of this. No final answer. Not yet. But here's what we know. An object entered our solar system from interstellar space. It accelerated before perihelion. It changed direction toward gravitational equilibrium points. It released visible jets and circular distortions in rhythmic patterns. It passed near Jupiter's Hill sphere, an ideal launch point. Earth will soon intersect its trail, and every institution built to explain this is avoiding the question. So we turn back to the telescope, to the 185 frames captured in a quiet backyard under a fading sky. The jets fire again. A circle pulses, and a man whispers into the dark, "It's not a comet. It never was.